We are here with Christie Tate. So excited to be speaking to you on video and audio from Chicago and Los Angeles, where I am. You are in Chicago, where you live, right?
Yes.
Excellent. So before we start the interview, Christie, here's my question for you. Would you rather give up heat and air conditioning for a year or your smartphone?
Oh my God. That is so hard. And you know what? I'm just going to answer with my gut and say my smartphone, because that a day of reckoning is coming for me and my smartphone, where I'm going to have to deal with the probably my addictive relationship to it, and ripping the Band-Aid off, I think would be amazing for my mental health and for all my relationships. And it pains me to say that, but I think that's the truth.
Yeah, I mean, there are places, you're not alone. There are so many people, I think especially after the pandemic, who are so reliant on their technology for connection, right? Yeah. And then there was that weird kind of dichotomy, because there was also, we were trapped with people for a year.
Yes.
So there was that connection as well.
Yeah, you almost had permission to escape on your phone, right?
Right.
Totally,
right.
totally.
Mm-hmm. So there was that really kind of up close and intimate day-to-day connection.
Yes.
But the people that we connected with outside of our bubble or our homes were all through technology. Right. So there's going to be a global detox, I think.
I know.
Yes.
Laura and I talked
so.
about having flip phones at one point for just just making phone calls and texting.
Yes.
Well, I talked about it. No, I talked about having a flip phone as a backup, because I was afraid that something might happen to my smartphone.
There you go.
That's why I talked about a flip phone.
I hit it in this good therapeutic sort of moving forward thing. Uh-huh.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for that, Christie. I am Laura Cathcart Robbins, and this is The Only One in the Room. But I am never the only one in this room, because, as usual, my boyfriend, producer, and co-host, Scott Slaughter, who I call Hun, is here as well.
Hi, honey.
Hey, Hun. So today we are talking to Christie Tate. I'm so excited about this. Mm-hmm. I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. Christie is a Chicago-based writer and essayist. That's a big deal to give up heat and air conditioning in Chicago, by the way. You got to be right? Really hardcore.
We're going to circle back to that at the end.
Yeah. She has been published in the New York Times Modern Love. It's one of my favorite modern loves ever. The Rumpus, the Washington Post, Chicago Tribune, McSweeney's Internet Tendency, Eastern Iowa Review, and elsewhere. Kiese Lehman, who we love, who was a guest on the show a couple months ago, selected her essay Promised Lands as the winner of the New Ohio Review's nonfiction contest, which was published in fall 2019. Damn. Welcome, Christie.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. I'm such a fan of the podcast.
Oh, well, we're so happy to have you. I just realized in this bio it doesn't talk about group, which is really important. Yeah. You can see it behind Christie, and I have my copy right here. Wait, not in screen. There you go. And it is a beautiful book. We're actually going to be giving one of these away, so you can have your own, which is fantastic. But yeah, so we're going to talk about group now. And so the title is your fabulous book, is called Group, How One Therapist and a Circle of Strangers Saved My Life. I have two questions for you. One, I ask all my guests this: how do you identify?
I identify as a woman, and my pronouns are she, hers, her.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you for that. So, Group, How One Therapist and a Circle of Strangers Saved My Life. As a writer, my first question to you was, what was the elevator pitch for your book? I was really curious about that.
Yeah, the elevator pitch came at the...
I'm sorry, can you just explain what an elevator pitch is first for people who don't know?
Sure. An elevator pitch is essentially like a one-sentence description of your book. And the way that I heard of it, when I first heard of it, I was at a writing conference, and they're like, you're trapped in an elevator with the editor of your dreams, and you have like one floor to tell him or her what your book is about. And so I really fretted about this, but my agent and I came up with, my book is Cheryl Strayed's Wild meets Lori Gottlieb's So You Think You Should Talk to Someone. So
Ah,
and a therapeutic journey and a woman's movement into self-actualization. Cheryl Strayed's journey is a little more solo, but that was sort of the elevator pitch.
I like it. I like it a lot. I think that actually, and that's really popular in Hollywood, right? When you're
Yes.
pitching something, you pitch what other two projects where they intersect. It's this meets this. It's
Right.
this meets this. So I like that. I think it describes
Yes.
it really well. I would have wanted to read it just having heard that elevator pitch anyway. So I think that's great. Okay, so tell me, how long have you been going to your group or to group?
Sure. I first went to see Dr. Rosen the summer, it was July 6th of 2001. And I had a couple of individual sessions. I started group on August 30th of 2001, and I still go.
Wow. So that is 20 years.
I'm committed. I don't like change. I don't like to leave things.
I feel you on that.
I also, yeah, Scott and I also, now I'm not a person who is psychologically or emotionally on the edge, but there are other people in my group who are in the middle of their stories, as, I was in the book, and I'm really nosy and curious, and I want to know what's going to happen. I'm invested in their lives and their journeys, and I want to know what's going to happen to them and to me.
That's really cool. Tell me what was going on in your life when you started.
Sure. So this was the summer of 2001, and I was having a lot of cognitive dissonance. On paper, my life was really, really good. I was healthy. I was 27 years old. I had been bulimic all through high school and part of college. I was in a 12-step program where my purging was under control. My eating was weird as all get out, but it was okay enough. And I was first in my law school class. And all these things on paper look like a bright future for a bright young woman. But inside, I felt like I had a secret. And the secret was I was going to be alone forever. I was going to die alone. I was really committed to that vision because I knew there was something so off about the way I had friendships and relationships. And the men that I dated, each one was more alcoholic or drug addicted than the next. And I could just look into the future and just see it just plummeting, my relationships, my abilities. Meanwhile, I was going to be a lawyer and a baller at some law firm in Chicago, and I'd have great purses. I always said I'm going to have great purses. And so I had really constructed a life that looked good on the outside, and meanwhile, behind the scenes, there was like a mental health crisis brewing, and I was really starting to wonder. I was having fantasies of dying, which is different than, I didn't have a plan. I wasn't at this stage of taking steps on my own behalf to end my life, but I was wishing that it would come because I didn't know the word loneliness, and I didn't know that it might kill me.
Wow. So, I mean, you and I talked on the phone, and we talked about this. And like I said, I've read your book, and I've read about this period of your life. And I think that, for me, I was married to a really successful man, and we got pregnant with 2 boys, back to back right away without any effort. And we had this life where we traveled, and there were premieres and, celebrities, and my life looked so good from the outside. And I didn't know what was wrong with me, that I wasn't happy. I didn't want to even tell anybody I wasn't happy because it would sound ungrateful almost, because I had all these things going for me. And I got that sense when I read that part of your book that, oh, I get that. Everything looks good on the outside. She should be, excited to be number one in her class. She should be, dating whoever she wants at this point because she has all this going on for her. And she's in this place that is really enviable. And yet there are these suicidal ideations. There's loneliness that you can't even name. You're in the 12-step group for bulimia, which is binging and purging for people who don't know. So that's why you joined the group. How did you come to the group?
Right. So I had, as that summer was progressing, and I found out I was first in my class, and this sort of sense of like, what's wrong with me? I should snap out of it, which does not work if you have a true mental health condition. And I was starting to go to my 12-step meetings. I had home meetings that I went to every week. And I was starting to like come apart in the meetings, like lots of crying, and people would say, "What's wrong?" And I would say, "I don't know. I only like really alcoholic men." People didn't really know how to, what am I doing with you on this? And I had a friend who like kind of insisted I go to dinner with her. And she was a friend of mine. She was also a recovering bulimic. I really respected her. She had all the boxes ticked, right? Happy marriage, was planning her ovulation so she could have a baby, and she had a career, and she was like, and she sort of, I knew in her, like, you can recognize someone who has a soul sickness similar to yours, and you kind of just, we'd always clicked, and I noticed a brightness in her. I noticed something had shifted. So we go to dinner. I just wanted to go home and watch Scrubs, but she was like, "Come to dinner." And I went and had dinner with her, and I just said, "What's different about you? You look different." And she was like, "Oh, it's my therapist." And my heart soared for like a second, because I was like, "Oh, I can see a therapist." And then it sunk, because I was like, I don't have that kind of money. I'm not a therapy person. Like, if the 12 steps aren't working, then I'm doomed. And she went on to tell me, and she said, "Well, it's group, and he's a genius, and it's only $70 a week." Now, I didn't have $70 a week, but that was better than, I knew individual therapy with a psychiatrist was like $195, and that just was out of my league until I became a lawyer and was making bank. But I was like, what if I don't make it? I got 2 years to get through this with this loneliness. And so she introduced me, and it was one of those things, like in the 12-step world, they say like, find someone who has what you want and carry the message. You don't try to run around promoting it. You just carry the message, and people will see it in you. And that was my experience with this woman and her therapy. And I called the doctor that night and left a message, because I wanted that light in my own eyes.
So when you went into that first session, and Dr. Rosen is a pseudonym, is that correct? Yes. So people don't need to look up Dr. Rosen in Chicago and see if they can get...
People keep telling me that people are Googling him. They're like, "Where is he?" And I'm like, that's not his name.
But when you went into that first session, what did you tell him or the group that you wanted to accomplish? What was your goal there?
Right. I had very concrete goals. And in the first session, before you get into a group, there's like 3 screening individual sessions with Dr. Rosen. And I sat down and I was like, I need to be in intimate relationships. And I meant friends, boyfriends. And I said it very clearly to him. I want a boyfriend who has good hygiene, who goes to Costco. I don't know why. Why would a single man go to Costco? Whatever. It just like, it was the portrait of this kind of domesticity and calmness. And I wanted a minivan. I wanted to settle down in my soul with a partner, and I wanted friends. And my criteria, I had friends and acquaintances. My criteria was, I want to be in relationships with people, like friends. They just drop by my house, and I open the door and we hang out. I don't have to put on my makeup. I don't have to get ready and do a bunch of productions or think of talking points. Like, I wanted to not work so hard and be a come as you are friend and partner to a hygienic man. And I said, if you can't do that in 5 years, I'm killing myself. And he was like, see you next week.
That's awesome. I love the hygienic man.
I'm down with the Costco thing.
I was
I love
obsessed with
Costco
that.
for the
Yeah.
samples. I used to go hang out for the samples.
They're bringing that
Right?
back now, finally. I just read that. Yeah.
Oh, yay.
I know,
I
right?
miss them.
When you and I talked, you said that you really felt the needle move. That's what I wrote down. When Dr. Rosen said, tell the group what you ate today. And in your book is this brilliant scene. You'll have to read it to really get, why it's so brilliant. I call the scene apples in my head.
Yeah.
It was actually the
good name.
excerpt that I read for On My Nightstand earlier this year in May. Can you tell us about that scene?
Yeah, this scene is really, as a memory, not even as a part of my book, it really was the moment when I thought, oh my God, I'm gonna get well. I could get well here if I choose this. And what Dr. Rosen said in the middle of a session, now I'm in a group, it's co-ed, there's 5 other people there. And out of the blue, he said to me, why don't you tell the group what you ate yesterday? And the fear I felt in my body was as if someone had just pushed me out of a plane, and I didn't know if I had the
parachute?
What's that called?
Parachute.
No. I didn't know if I had. Thank you. I didn't know if I had the parachute, and I'm just free falling, and it was such an illuminating moment because I'd been going since I was 19, and at this point I'm like 28. I had been going to 12-step meetings 3 times a week to talk about my food and my body, and I used to vomit, and I don't anymore. But I never told anyone what I put in my mouth, and I had great, great shame about it. And somehow Dr. Rosen intuited it. And maybe it was like super obvious, but it wasn't to me. I thought I was a great hider. We'd literally been talking about somebody's ferret. And then he turns to me and was like, how about your food? And I realized, like, I did not know how shame was working in my life. I did not know that the shame I felt about my food and what I ate was one of the primary reasons I was all alone. And I didn't have a roommate, and I didn't have open, loving relationships because I was hiding this humongous part of my life, and the shame was just coating me like scalp to ankle. It was so intense. And once I told the group, I didn't want to do it, and I fought it. I would have rather like taken off all my clothes. That's how much shame I had. My big secret was at night I would binge on red delicious apples. And I've told people this, and they're upwards of 12. I would say the average was 8. 6, I remember calling one. I had one friend who lived in Colorado, and she had an apple issue too. And we would call each other, because this was before texting was even invented. And we would call each other and we'd say, I ate 6. And I remember 6 being a good night, which in the scheme of things, 6 apples was not going to kill me. It wasn't going to really change my body that much. Yes. But the fact that it was a secret, and it was often double 6, when I was vomiting before I came into the 12-step program, it was like a half a pizza out of the trash. That's splashy. That's terrible. But for me, if I'm holding a secret and I have shame, it kind of doesn't matter if it came out of the trash or it came from the produce section of Whole Foods. A secret warps me and it distorts all my thinking about my very self and makes it impossible to get near me for other people.
I wonder, do you have in your mind a distinction between something that's private and something that's a secret?
Oh, God, that's such a good question. I don't have a good, it's almost like that Supreme Court ruling about pornography. I know it when I see it. Because it is the case that, and the ethos of the group is bring everything to group. We do not have secrets. And so sometimes when I talk to people, I've tried to lay that out in the book because that's a big piece of why I got well. I believe that for myself. But does that mean that the whole world gets to hear everything about me? Especially now it's complicated. I'm a parent now. And so I definitely consider my children's anything about my children, that's private. That belongs to them. And I would take it to group, but I would not take it to America. I've learned that lesson a very hard way, but that's absolutely the right call for me and my family. Same thing with some things with my brother or my parents, for example. There were sections that were in the book that sort of give a little more flavor about the household I grew up in. And at some point I just decided it wasn't necessary for me to tell my story, and I wasn't ready to open some of those cans. And I wanted to protect the privacy of the people who did not ask to be part of my book. So I had to really walk a line. I walk the line when writing, and I also walk it in my everyday life. I go to group twice a week, and I can say whatever I want about anybody I want. And I can name names and be specific and talk about body parts. But that doesn't mean I do that everywhere. and the same thing on the page. But sometimes I mess up, and sometimes I trip out of my own sense of my boundaries of privacy, and I'm like, that was the wrong call.
Yeah,
so I get it wrong.
I
get it wrong sometimes.
I don't know for me if there is a hard line. I think for me, if it's something that I would die if you find out, if you found this out, I would die. That's probably a secret. And there's probably an appropriate way to tell that to people, the appropriate people, like you're talking about, like in a confidential setting, to, one-on-one, or for me and my sponsor in my program, like that is the appropriate place to make it not a secret anymore, but just something that's private. So yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for that thoughtful answer. You say this about your friend Claire when you're hesitant to tell her that you joined a second group. You say that she is not a consumer of mental health services. I thought that was a lovely way of saying she might be skeptical. And for me, who's also someone who's not a consumer of mental health services, I know that you said the needle moved for you during the Apple scene. But for me, reading your book, it felt like, okay, this group therapy might really be something when you told the story of your trip to Hawaii and the results that happened afterwards. Can you tell us that story, what happened there, and then what happened when you told it to the group?
Sure. So I think it was in my very first session with Dr. Rosen when I was still doing the individual screening with like 2 minutes to go. And I'm watching the clock because I'm not going to overstay my welcome and I'm not going to have him cut me off. It was 2 minutes to go. I said, oh, by the way, when I was 13, like 2 weeks before my 14th birthday, I went to Hawaii with my best friend. And while we were there, her father drowned at the beach. So I got to go. And I like stood up and he was like, hold on. And that's sort of how I had treated, that was a traumatic event. It happened when I was, 13 years old, right before high school. It was very traumatic. Nobody in our community, meaning my parents or my friend Jenny, her parents, people didn't know what to do with traumatized teenagers. There weren't that many tools in the toolbox. And so I decided, I went to see a therapist a couple of times back then, but I didn't know what we were doing. It didn't feel that great. It kind of made me sad to go there and talk about what had happened in Hawaii. And so I just buried it. And what happened when it came out in group, Dr. Rosen rightly picked up on the fact that this was a trauma that I had not processed. Like if processing is like integrating into your whole body, it had made it to the tip of my tongue. And I could sort of talk about it, but never with feeling. And that was obviously, I'm assuming, a red flag for him. And one of the very first things that he picked up on when I ended up telling the story in group, I'm this sort of like, I'm slightly awkward like any 13-year-old. I feel like I'm too big in my body. And my friend Jenny and her family, they just scooped me up and they just folded me into their family. They had taken me skiing when we were in 7th grade. And then after 8th grade, they invited me to go with them to Hawaii. And it was this chance of a lifetime. My family didn't vacation elaborately. We would go to the coast of Texas, that was our Padre Islands, like that was paradise. And so my friend Jenny, her family just whisked me off to Hawaii and we had these like 3 glorious days. And on the 4th day, we went to a mountain lookout point. And what I remember, now of course, memory, now I'm almost 32 years beyond this or whatever, more than that. It was decades ago. I was traumatized. I was 13. And this was like the most cataclysmic event of my entire life has just unfolded. What my memory told me was we had parked. I was with Jenny, my friend, her brother, and her dad. Her mom had stayed back at the hotel to pack up or make dinner. She just wasn't into another beach day. She wanted a break. So we go down to this beach. And what I remember is that there was a no trespassing sign. And we just sort of blew past it and went down to this beautiful, secluded white sand beach. And the surf was really intense. And Jenny's dad succumbed to it. And every time I think about that, I was like not athletic. I was overweight. I was self-conscious.
I was about to say, you almost
I don't know
succumbed
how
to
I
it
got
as
out
well.
of the ocean alive. I really... Yeah, yeah, I gloss over that, but the truth is it's a very intense, it was like the nook of two mountains. There was no one else around. So we got into trouble, which we did. There's no one there. It's just the four of us. And it was like a half a mile down a mountain trail. So you can't run to go get help. And so I got out of the water because I almost didn't, but I was able to it was just the undertow. It wasn't like a riptide. It was just it looks like gentle swells, but it was like the undertow of like a psychotic washing machine. And I got out, and then Jenny got out, and we could see her brother, and then her dad had already drowned, and there was no one around.
Where
and
did
I
you
went
run?
to run and get help. And this story, I ran up this mountain where the car was, and so I can no longer see them on the beach, but I can hear them screaming. They're with their father's body, and all I know is somebody has to get help here. We need an adult. And I got to the top of the mountain, and it was like a lookout point. So people were stopping and taking pictures, and I saw these old golfers, and I sent them down the mountain. And I remember they were walking, and I just kept screaming out to them, "He's not dead. He's not dead. They just need help." It's like I really needed that to be true. And then I saw a cabin like in the clearing, and I went and knocked on the door. There was no one there. And then a family with a doctor stopped at the lookout point. And I thought this was denial and youth and naivete. I thought, oh, a doctor's here. Now we're good. I mean, now 30 minutes have elapsed. I send the doctor down and his son, and the mother of the wife of the doctor, she gave me a blanket. She gave me a root beer. I sat in her car, and she really, it's one of those angels that I'll never see her again. I don't know her name. They were from San Jose. That's all I remember. And she held me until they could come back up and confirm he didn't make it. And she flagged down I guess it was highway patrol, base sent a helicopter. So then the mechanisms of, the state were now brought to bear to the situation. But it was a long time. I was by myself. It had started to rain. It started to hail. And I was a little bit like, I had gone to Catholic school. And I thought, this is like Job. Like, am I dreaming? Like, now it's going to hail. Here come the snakes. Like, what else is going to happen? And I had just never...
Well, I just want to...
Go ahead.
I was just going to interrupt you for a second because I was really struck by the fact that did you have shoes on?
Oh, no.
I know you...
No.
You bolted out of the water. You were in your swimsuit, right?
Yes.
And you run up this mountain by yourself.
Yes.
And this is not your family, but as you described, this is a family who had taken you in. You had spent a great deal of time with them.
Yeah.
Very casually.
Totally.
Right?
Totally.
Never thinking that, you should be grateful for the moments you have together, that kind of thing. It didn't even occur to you.
Totally. Yes.
And then you run up and you're surrounded by all these strangers. You're dripping wet in your swimsuit without shoes. This family they've stayed together down there.
Yes.
With their dad.
Yes. Right.
And the mom is still back at the
she's
wherever
back at
you were
the condo.
staying.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now the police are involved. So take us from there.
Yeah. So I had just run up. I still can picture that. The OP bathing suit I was wearing. Anyway, no shoes, no towel. This woman had given me a blanket, and we had to go to the police department to fill out forms. And we're three teenagers. Jenny's brother was about to be a senior. We were going into our freshman year. We went to the police station. We filled out paperwork, and then we drove back to the condo. And now here's the most... intimate is the only word I can think of. Agonizing intimacy. They have to now tell their mom that dad's not coming home. And here's this tag along, Christie Tate. It was really beyond the horror and the agony and the sorrow and the shock. There's this sense of I'm not even supposed to be here. This is a family moment. And then they had to call a brother back home. And so understandably, Dr. Rosen pressed on that. Still does, but in the early years, he knew that I hadn't let the grief and the confusion of all of that come out of my body and let it be part of my story with my feelings.
But why did he think that piece of your story was so important to your goal that you came in with of having relationships?
I think that he knew that the fact that I had kept all the sorrow and grief and terror. There was a great deal of terror locked inside of me. I became a person who didn't think I could ever survive a loss like that again, which makes it hard to get into relationships. It was nothing conscious. It wasn't like, well, I can't have a good boyfriend who I would love because maybe he'll die at the beach. But slowly, as I teased this out, it was very clear to me. How I knew it was when we started to really work on this in group, and I would scream and cry, and I would feel like I was back at the beach, and I have these group mates watching me and this doctor. And I remember it was triggered because Dr. Rosen was going to go on a beach vacation. And I realized there was a part of me that's like, I'm out. Like, you could die. We're not doing this. And I felt myself wanting to retreat because it was going to hurt so bad to lose him. And it became clear to me, like, oh, I must do this with everyone, because if I get close, I knew from experience, people could die. They could die out of the blue. They could die in paradise. And it was a real barrier to my ability to be intimate with other people. And it really was just so clear.
Yeah. Boy, thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
It's a really difficult portion to read. And I know that there's been a lot of time that's transpired since then, but I felt very protective of 13-year-old you, and like, why are the police questioning them? And why, like, how are they expecting these minors to take care of this? And even when you were having a hard time getting out of the water, I'm like, where's the dad? Like, why isn't he near her? And then to realize where it was going, and then what happened. And then there was something about reading your epiphany, your revelation, once Dr. Rosen had kind of put it in this light, that made me go, oh, okay. So something's really happening with this. This is important, not just because it happened then. It's important for everything that happened later and for going forward from this point. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
So there are some times in the book when he asks you to do things that just horrified me, like call somebody before and after you masturbate. Yeah. Tell the guy that you're dating that you're a cock tease. And tells one of his patients, I think he doesn't tell him not to go down on you, but he tells him to take it slow. Or does he tell him directly? I
think it was pretty direct. Yeah.
And this is somebody that he's also treating. So you were seeing somebody that, okay, so that was all. It seemed like he had a God complex to me. Yeah. And I know you complain about it to the reader as you're going through it, like, I don't want to do this. This is ridiculous, like that kind of thing. But you always seem to comply, which definitely goes along with your good girl persona that we know you to be. And you're even eager to join more of his groups after that. Tell me why. Tell me about that.
Yeah, this is something that I've talked to a lot of therapists since the book came out, and they are real upset about exactly the points that you just made. It's like he's very directive. Dr. Rosen will say, "Oh, you're having trouble. You hate your breasts? Well, go get a tattoo that says I hate my breasts," and henna. Like, they're very specific. They require, the prescriptions that I got required so much courage and suspension of doubt. And so there's a couple things I would say about that. I totally get it's not for everybody. As a practitioner therapist, some of them are like, that is not proper, or they just prefer not to do that. And for patients, it's not for everybody. What I dug about it was, it was so bizarre. It was so bizarre to be researching henna tattoos, or some of the other ones, like calling the book, he calls it bookending masturbation. So you call before, you do your thing, have your pleasure, and then you call afterwards. It was like literally turned my stomach. And as you said, I did it all. And here is my best guess of why. I'm a compulsive complier. So I am going to do what authority figures tell me to do. But also, I had been so numb for so long that these prescriptions were like jolting me. They were introducing me to new parts of myself, and they were jolting me awake. And I didn't feel like, first of all, I didn't know you could say no until maybe after the events of the group. Like, no, I'm not going to do that. I wanted to see what would happen if I surrendered to this crazy magician therapist I had. And each step I took, I got something different back for myself. Like, I didn't feel like I was sliding back down. I was proud of myself. I was being brave. It might have been really stupid to take some of these, and other people have pushed back. Here's the other thing that I didn't story as much in the book because it's not my story. I watched other group mates get prescriptions and take them, and they were different afterwards. I really wanted to be different. I wanted to feel different. And I had been doing the same old thing. Make good grades, be a good girl, follow the speed limit. I'd been doing all the right things for so long that to have someone like bust out with something that seemed crazy was sort of entertaining. And I thought, there's no way I'm the same Christie on the other side of this. And I cared more about that than whether this was proper. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. And that actually, when whoever's listening or watching, I hope you read the book because it's fantastic. And that comes across in the book. You didn't story that, and that might have been helpful for me at first to know that you had seen the success in other people. But eventually I'm with you because the changes are happening and these are the changes that you wanted. It feels like a little electric shock, like kind of really controversial therapy, but it does, like you said, jolt you awake, right? Jolts you into something else. And so you're really, as the reader, you're really invested in your group members who all also have pseudonyms, and so no one has a real name, but you're invested in them in this very, because you don't know too much about their story. I know that you could tell that you were being mindful with that, but it's this very friendly environment. And even in your second group where it's not so touchy feely, we used to call it warm fuzzies. It's not so much that, but there's this what is it? What's the word I'm looking for? You're bound to them. In this way, this connection that it seems really beautiful and enviable. 4 of your bridesmaids, when you got married, were Dr. Rosen's patients. And you made sure that you had a special dance with Dr. Rosen at your wedding. I want you to tell me why and then tell me about that.
Yeah, I still, even to this day, I'm 12 years into a marriage that to me is very real. I don't describe my marriage as happy because I think that word is so hollow. I love my husband. I have his back. He has mine. And we do the real stuff that our lives call for, parenting and working and living. And that's what I wanted. And I have not forgotten what it felt like to be Christie in 2000 and 2001 before she crawled into group. And I did not think I would ever have any kind of marriage. If I did have a marriage, he would for sure be alcoholic, and I would for sure have terrible, terrible lonely nights. And I haven't had one of those nights. And so when I was actually moving towards the altar with this man who exceeded my bucket list was pretty small, Costco and hygiene. And my husband was like, he just seemed to think I was just entertaining and charming, and he loved me and he wanted to be with me, and there was no drama. There was like zero drama. And I credit the group with that. I 100%. And people have asked me through this whole experience, could you have gotten where you are today without the group? My answer is, I don't think so. Could I have gotten there with a great individual therapist? Probably. I don't know who that would be. I don't think group's the only way to go, but I couldn't have done it without outside help. And so when it was time to get married, it only made sense to me to celebrate the bodies that were with me in the rooms where I started to get well, the apples, Hawaii, all the prescriptions, all of the ways I fell on my face and didn't learn my lessons till I did. I wanted them with me, and it seemed to me I wanted to honor Dr. Rosen. He's not my dad, and he plays this huge role in my life that I wanted to honor at the wedding ceremony. It would have felt dishonest to not somehow mark that with the joy that I finally felt around being a person who could have a partnership. And so I asked him if we could do a dance, and when I look back now, it's I just think I was just so naive. Like I just wanted what I wanted, and I still to this day don't know what my parents think about that. I'm like having this like really tender moment with this very Jewish moment with my therapist, and I'm a little Catholic girl. Like, but they just gave me the space to do what I wanted, and I honored my father as well. But I have a life where I wanted to honor more than one person, because it took more than one person to get me where I am.
I love that image too. I have a picture of him from your description in the book in my head, and I love the image of you, the two of you. What kind of dance was it? Slow or fast?
It was not fast. It was not fast. It was kind of like waltzy.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm picturing. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I have a couple last questions. So 20 years later, all the issues that you came in to address, you not have gone away, but you have confronted them. Yes. And you found love, you have children, you're in a healthy relationship. Or how did you describe your marriage? You're in a real relationship, a real marriage. In your book, you refer to yourself as a lifer. Meaning that you're just going to be one of those people who's in group. Is that what you mean by that?
It is. It totally is. And I get that question all the time. Like, when are you done? When do you get to graduate? Does anybody leave? And I get that question. I understand where it's coming from. I probably had it before I became, a convert. And it's not lost on me that my being a lifer financially benefits Dr. Rosen. I get that. I also don't care. I also am going to be a lifer, hopefully, for, I get at the gym, or, I get my manicurist. I hope I'm COVID notwithstanding, I'd like to go back to having some beauty services. And I just think, for me, I believe in having mental health support. I no longer subscribe to the model that mental health treatment is to solve a problem. For me, it's supporting wellness. I completely recognize the privilege of time and money. That is no joke. That is no joke. And when now we zoom in, so it's like an hour, for 90 minutes twice a week, I can zoom in. When I go back to commuting, I'm gonna really feel the press of taking half a day to go work on my relationships. But I really, really believe in it. And if my life has been so transformed in these 20 years, why wouldn't I sign up for more? I love the people, I'm attached, and I'm still hungry. I don't have the same problems I have, but I have new things I'm reaching for that are out of my grasp that I can't imagine going for without a group. I can't imagine. Why would I do that? If I can pull it off financially and with the time commitment, I'd like to stay.
Well, and it reminds me, because as I said before, I'm in 12-step recovery. And when I first started going to meetings, people would say, well, how long do you have to go? And my answer would be like, I think I got to go forever. I think that's the way it works. I don't think there's a stop date. And, and I think about, when you talked about the prescriptive aspect, antidepressants and that kind of thing, which I completely believe in. But very often when they're prescribed, you're on them forever as well. So this isn't like a new concept that you would be prescribing group for yourself forever, because this is something that's helping with the issues that you're looking to address. And, it seems like the changes that you've seen are changes that would be proof enough for anybody to want to keep going. That would be motivation enough, right? What you described just to me in this hour. And then also, again, please read. And I have to pull my screen over because I can't see myself, but I'm going to pull it over now so you can see this book. It's so good. It's so good. I just loved it so much. And
thank you.
Yeah, I had a couple more questions, but I don't want to step on Scott's toes. Scott's going to talk to you for a few minutes for tomorrow's episode, and so I'm gonna let him, because I saw him scribbling right at the moments that I made mental notes, so we might have the same thing. So I'm going to ask you now, what's next for you?
Great. I'm working on another book. I feel like what group really storied was how I got straightened out in my relationships, ultimately with men, and with my sexuality and intimacy with men. And I had the experience in my real life that once I got settled in my marriage, I sort of looked up and was like, I have some issues in my friendships. I had some real blind spots and unresolved, just the nicest way I can put it is I had some really bad habits that I drugged into my friendships. And because I was so concerned about getting married, I just let those simmer. And now I'm sort of taking an eye towards how did I get straightened around in my female friendships.
I love that idea. It's absolutely my journey in life. Once things got settled, Scotty and I have been together for almost 13 years, but even way prior to this, I needed to look at my girlfriends and male friends and see, and non-binary friends, and see where I could feel better about our relationships and where I could do better. So I'll be looking forward to reading that book of yours, Miss Christie Tate. Thank you. Tell me where people can find you.
Thank you. Sure. I spend time mostly on Instagram at Christie O. Tate, and that's really where I hang out. I don't have a thick enough skin.
You really
for
do
Twitter.
need one for Twitter.
I'm too scared.
Yeah. Oh, they're so
the
brutal.
thick skin, right? Yeah, it made me feel so. I had gotten into a fight with a man, or I guess it was a man, a Twitter user, who was trying to take down Roxane Gay, who does just, she can take care of herself, but I went down a rabbit hole, and this guy had attacked her body and her intellect, and I was like, hold my earrings, and it turned out he was like a youth pastor, and I was just. And what I became, and also Roxane Gay can take care of herself. That was like the crazy. She doesn't need some crazy unhinged white woman in Chicago taking care of her. And I just was like, I can't, I have to go. So I have a website where where I collect all my writing.
It's a great website.
That's
ChristieTate.com.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Roxane Gay is, I'm just putting it out there into the ethos, the universe, whatever, dream guest. I love her so much. Oh my goodness.
Yes. Y'all would have such good chemistry.
One day. Kiesi Lehman was another dream, and that happened, and you're another dream, and here you are. So it's happening. Before we leave, let's
manifest.
Shout out Meg Weber, which I forgot to do at the beginning, and thank her for connecting us and making sure that this happened. I'm so grateful, Meg. So thank you.
Thank you, Meg Weber.
Yes.
Yeah, Meg Weber is amazing. She's an amazing writer, and she's also a therapist, so she hits all the buttons for me, and just a very generous writer.
And if you missed Meg's episode, it's a year of Mr. Lucky. I did look at her book. I always get it wrong with her.
The title is a tricky
year
one,
of Mr. Lucky, and that was in May of 2021 that we dropped her episode. So thank you, Christie. Thank you so much. This has been really one of the most interesting conversations I've had, truly. And I just appreciate you. I think you're mad cool. And hopefully we'll get to talk again.
Thank you, Christie.
I would love that. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Scott. This has been a total pleasure, and I really am a fan, and I love seeing who you guys talk to. It's always so stimulating and so genuine, so thank you. I'm Christie Tate, and I'm the only one in the room who healed her shame through group therapy.